Okay, the thieves of distorted views, roaming the fearful wilds of inferior practice. So we explained what that meant. And the barren wastes of absolutism and nihilism. We explained that. They sacked the towns and hermitages of benefit and bliss, meaning upper rebirth, liberation and enlightenment. The thieves of wrong views, please protect us from this danger. So if we look at the Noble Eightfold Path, you know, when we talk about the Four Noble Truths, the truth of the path, one way to explain it is in terms of the Noble Eightfold Path. And the first of those is right view, which is the opposite of wrong view. So what that means is at the very beginning of starting to practice, it's very important to develop the correct view. Here, the correct view is in particular referring to the view of emptiness, not the view of emptiness, sorry, to the view of karma and its effects. Because in order to really practice, we have to have some idea of karma and then get our life in order so we stop creating so much negative karma by avoiding the 10 non-virtues, and then by practicing the 10 virtues, creating a lot of positive karma. And so that's how we explain correct view at the beginning, okay? And then from there you go to correct thought, which is the motivation for practicing the path. And then, you know, correct livelihood and action and speech and mindful effort and mindfulness and concentration, okay? But after you get to the end, when you're getting towards the end, towards mindfulness and concentration, then, although it isn't spoken, you come upon right view again, because at the end of the Eightfold Path, what you want to focus your mindfulness and concentration on is the right view, but here meaning the right view in terms of the understanding of emptiness. Okay? So at the beginning we really need to have a good understanding of the Buddhist worldview. And I think that's why His Holiness really emphasizes doing the Lamrim meditations and going through all these different topics and becoming familiar with them, because in that way we get the view of how the Buddha is presenting the teachings. You know, if we don't have as I've said before, people can benefit a lot from the teachings without having the view of rebirth and samsara and nirvana and so on. But if we're really serious about attaining awakening, then we need that rebirth. I mean, we need that worldview of rebirth and samsara and nirvana, and to understand what they are, because the teachings are spoken on the support of that worldview. Yeah, and you know the meaning of precious human rebirth is something different if you have that worldview than if you don't have that worldview, and the meaning of refuge, okay, is different, and the meaning of bodhicitta and compassion, and all these things are different if you have that worldview than if you don't. And so that's why it's so important to really become familiar with that worldview. And even though it may not automatically be familiar or make sense to us, you know, just, you know, not to push it away, but kind of play with it, if you will, in the sense of just think, well, you know, how would that affect how I see life and explain things if I had that worldview? Yeah, and really think of how it all fits together, you know, and then slowly, gradually, as you study more, as you think more, as you meditate more, then the worldview begins to make more sense, and it becomes your worldview. And then that opens the door to really seeing much more profound levels in understanding the teachings. Okay? Because like I was saying, you know, bodhicitta means totally different things if there is rebirth than if there isn't rebirth. Completely different. Okay? So, you know, yeah.
Apply it to Sutra and Tantra?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, even, yeah, it applies to Sutra and Tantra, you know, because Tantra is based on Sutra, on the Sutra viewpoint. You can't practice Tantra without this worldview. Yeah? Uh-huh.
Last night when the couple were talking about the men incarcerated and that there's this feeling in a lot of our world that people cannot change, so why bother punishment and not changing? The whole idea that we cannot change, is that part of the wrong view of absolutism, or is it just the wrong view of things being truly existent? How does that?
Okay. So when we were at a discussion last night about prison work, and somebody was saying that so many people have the view that human beings can't change. So which part of the wrong, you know, is that absolutism, is that nihilism? It seems to me that that wrong view is part of absolutism, because it's saying, you know, there's these inherently existent people with inherently existent personalities, and, you know, and it's all there and it can't change. Yeah, it's truly existent. Yeah, you are a truly existent, corrupt, you know, person. Yeah, and if that were true, then, you know, it's true. We don't need religion because it's impossible to change. Yeah, why do anything if we're permanent? Yeah, but, you know, it's because the reasoning is if things are truly existent, then they're permanent. Okay, but our experience is that things are impermanent. So things cannot be impermanent and also be truly existent. Yeah?
Because it's interesting that we have that view accepting impermanence in certain agreeable societal levels, but when it gets down to biases that we have in relationship to each other, then it becomes a permanent situation.
Right.
It's unchanging. How we just simply, you know, arbitrarily think.
Yeah. Well, even the whole way we do self-deprecation, you know, I'm such an unworthy, you know, person, that's also falling to the view of true existence and absolutism, you know. And the fact, like you said, that on one level, yes, everything changes. On the other level, everything's inherently existent. This just shows how completely confused we are. Yeah? And how we don't even notice our confusion. Okay. Good.